Good morning to everyone. I'm Valentina Catanzaro from University of Salento, and I'm going to explain the main results of the work entitled Impact of Dust Outbreaks on Particle Mass Concentration at the Surface during the COVID-19 lockdown measures over southeastern Italy. The main objectives of our work is to investigate, first of all, the impact of lockdown measures over air quality at two different sites of southeastern Italy that are very different from each other. One is an urban traffic site and the other is a rural background site. More in specific, we wanted to analyze the impact of the lockdown measures on two parameters, the PM2.5 and the PM10 mass concentration. And at the end, we wanted to identify dust events and to study their impact on PM10 and PM2.5 mass concentration during the investigated periods. The COVID-19 lockdown measures in Italy started the 9th March 2020 and ended the 18th May 2020. During this period, all non-essential industrial production activities were suspended and was also forbidden to move outside the place of residence. We wanted to analyze two sites of Lecce. One is Lecce Libertini, which is a square in the center of the city and is affected from human activities such as traffic, domestic heat, and also industrial activities. So we have identified this site as an urban traffic monitoring area. The other one is Cerrate, which is far from the city center, and it is surrounded by the sea. So in this case, we have identified this site as a rural and a background area. We have used the Apulia Region Air Quality Agency data, and the monitoring station is composed by a SWAM dual-channel instrument that can analyze the mass concentration of the tested parameters such as PM2.5 and PM10. In order to analyze the effect of lockdown, we firstly have studied the changes of mass concentration of PM10 and PM2.5 in both sites. We can see that these two parameters have the same trend in Libertini and in Cerrate. So we can see that there is a decrease of mass concentration starting from the lockdown period. The study area is also affected not only from local sources, but also from long-range transports. For example, there are aerosol sources from the north and the east of Europe, also from the Mediterranean Sea, and also from the Saharan Desert. So a preliminary analysis have shown that during the period of lockdown, Saharan dust affected the southeastern Italy. And we have listed those days. We have identified them using two models. The first one is based on forecasts, and the other one is based on back trajectory. This in order to identify the origin of the air masses. Here we have an example of the 17th of May 2020, as you can see. From those two pictures, you can see that in this day there was a dust outbreak. We have studied the percentage reduction between the pre-lockdown and the post-lockdown period in Libertini, which I just said that is an urban traffic site. We can see that there is a significant reduction in the post-lockdown box plot, both from PM10 and PM2.5. This reduction for PM10 is about 30%, and for PM2.5 is about 39%. This because this site is more affected by fine particles derived from anthropogenic activities. So we have a more visible decrease of PM10 of PM2.5 mass concentration instead of the PM10. We have made the same work for Cerrate, that is a rural background site, and we can see that the mass concentration of the two tested parameters follow the same trend of the urban traffic site, but we can see that the mass concentration reductions are smaller. The most significant one is for the PM2.5, which has a reduction of the 25.2%. And also PM10 has a reduction that is about 11%. I also want to remember that this rural background site is far from anthropogenic activities, so the quartz fraction is dominant. Then we have made the average percent departure. We have made a comparison between the reference year that refers to the average daily concentration of the 3 years before the 2020, so 2017, 2018, and 2019, and we have compared them with the average of daily mean values of the 2020. And we have found that the most significant reduction is in the post-lockdown period, in particular in June. So the largest decrease, for example, of PM10 started in June and lasted up at about October. The same trend follows the PM2.5, but the decrease of APD is more relevant because in this side, a larger contribution of fine particle is observed, as I just said. So we have a reduction in June of the 38% for the PM2.5, and also in June for PM10, we have a reduction of the 33% in the post-lockdown period. The rural background site follows the same trend. We have that the PM10 and PM2.5 mass concentration decrease as the urban traffic site, but in this site the APD percent was less marked. Since on average is less affected by anthropogenic activities. Here we have a reduction of the PM2.5 of 37% in June and lasted up since October. And at the same time, the PM10 shows a reduction in June of the 35%. So also in this case, the reduction is observed in the post-lockdown period. Then we have the box plot that refers to the dust, refers to the comparison of the dust events and the days which not included the dust events. Actually, as I just said, one of the most important objective was to analyze the effect of dust outbreaks over the study area. And the comparison between the two data sets, the first containing the dust event and the second from which the dust days have been removed, shows that the Saharan dust had an important and a significant effect on the PM10 mass concentration. If we excluded those days during the lockdown period, the PM10 and the PM2.5 mass concentration, the reduction increased of the 18 and 3.6% respectively. So we can see that the mean values, for example, of PM10 during the lockdown period, if we consider the dusty days, is about 22.2 mass concentration, while if we excluded the dusty days, is about 18.2. Also, the rural background site have a significant reduction of PM10 mass concentration if we wanted to consider the no dusty days. This site actually is less exposed to fine particles. We have a reduction of the 30% of mass concentration of the PM10 if we excluded the dusty days from the data set. Also here we have again calculated the APD, and we can see that the Saharan dust particles affected more the PM10, and we can see from the graphic that we have a lower APD decrease for PM2.5 particles compared to the PM10, just because in the Libertini area, PM10 2.5 particles are less affected and influenced by dust events. We have that in March for the PM10, we have a reduction of the 24%, while for PM2.5, we have a reduction of the 4%. Also, for the background and rural site Cerrate, the Saharan dust particles affected the quartz fraction more than the PM2.5, in accordance of the characteristic of the site. We have a reduction in March, so during the period of lockdown, of the 27% for the PM10, while for the PM2.5, we have a reduction of the 6% just in March. The impact of dust was absent in April in both sites. So in conclusion, we can summarize our result into 3 points. We have compared 2 different sites. The first one, the urban traffic, affected firstly from anthropogenic activities, such as, and human activities, such as traffic, domestic heat, and also industrial activities, while the rural background site is far from the city center and is very, very close to the sea. So we can say that the lockdown measures had a significant effect on fine particles on both sides because of the of the absence of anthropogenic activities. The most significant reduction for PM2.5 mass concentration was observed in the period after the lockdown measures in both sites, and the reduction is equal to 39% for urban traffic, while the reduction for the rural background was about 25%. The dust events, on the opposite, influenced the quartz fraction, so the PM10 fraction, in both sites during the lockdown. Once that we have identified and then we have excluded those dusty days in the period of examination, we have seen that there is a significant reduction of PM10, of the 18 and the 30% of mass concentration in Libertini, which is the urban traffic site, and Cerrate, which is the rural background. Finally, the 2 sites had been affected differently by lockdown measures and dust outbreaks. The urban traffic site is more sensitive to fine particles, just because of the human sources, while the rural background area is more influenced by quartz fraction because it is far from the city center, I just said. Thank you for your attention.